So, welcome everyone to another episode of me talking to someone. Today we are talking to Andrew Shiel Dods, who has run Red Planet Rising today at MegaCon. So, thank you very much for that, Andrew. So, the brief we put out for this was Mars has been colonized. Millions of people lived and worked on the Red Planet. Then the apocalypse happened, and a century has passed, and the survivors have tried to pull themselves up out of the dirt, and they're ready to claim their place as the one who gets to call the shots on the Red Planet, which I think we can all agree is a very nice and evocative start to a game. We all love space, we all love Mars, we all love a bit of post-apocalyptic action. So as ever, if you've got any questions at all, feel free to put them into the questions. We want to get as much out of Andrew as possible, even if he is slightly fried right now, having controlled a game and run a game back to back. So thank you very much for being here, Andrew. So yeah, kick us off. Andrew, tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm Andrew Shiel Dods. I'm designer of Red Planet Rising. As Matt said, I think my start in the hobby was a few years back, shortly after the Watch the Skies video from Shoving It Down. And I started with Pennine for a lot of my games, but when True North got set up by Seamus, I jumped on that bandwagon, and they were happy enough to have me when we ran Red Planet Rising for the first time back in August last year. It's been ran 3 times now. It's been quite fantastic to see, and I'm looking forward to running it again in June, July with Pennine. So it's quite an interesting kind of leap from being in the sidelines at the start to kind of becoming one of the designers, which is quite a nice transition, as it were.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you very much. So I'm not sure, I suppose Red Planet Rising is a slightly newer game, so I'm not sure how familiar people are going to be. So why don't you kind of give us the overall kind of tone of the game?
It's so, I would say the overall tone is kind of like a bit light-hearted, post-apocalyptic. It's not after the apocalypse, it's after the point where civilization is coming back into the fore and governments are being considered now more than just basic survival needs. So all the kind of the factions are very much gangs with very strong theming, kind of based on various elements of Martian society. So you've got the MCPD, who are the police, but not all they are the core component of what makes a cop. And you have Stadium, who are sports fans in one of the massive arena complexes, who are kind of all they've been living off is 100 years of sports stories and living in a stadium. So they're all sports fanatics, and that's then culture. So it's got that serious tone of we're in Mars, post-apocalypse, it's happened, there's serious events going around us, but our feelings are kind of ridiculous in many ways, which kind of is a light-hearted tone, people going to that extreme end of what that kind of character would be.
Okay, so how did you come up with those kind of themes that you wanted to accentuate in that way?
Originally, it was kind of meant to be a D&D campaign with me and my friends, and I was going to set it on Mars. And then basically, there's this fantastic bit of art someone had, and it was all this ship in the Martian landscape with a number on it and a traveler heading towards it in distance, a second one. And it kind of got me thinking about what would be surviving on Mars. And that first kind of idea was crash military vessels. And kind of jumped to what large facilities would be on Mars that could actually handle and survive a large population after a century would still be around. And you picked out all these kind of interesting kind of groups who could be there. And then went, what would they be if all they had was that kind of theming? So what would be funny? And so like Stadium was, what if you had 2 sports teams who hate each other but live together in a stadium for 100 years? What would that look like? How would they respond? What would their strengths and weaknesses be? And you can, after a while, you kind of find that they have these very evocative kind of stylings that you can put behind them and let you kind of see how they would interact with each other. So MCPD and Stadium hate each other because one's the police and the other is a rabble in their terms of a bunch of sports fans who like to get a bit rowdy at times. So it kind of has that natural positive and negative relations to each other, which kind of really kind of bring those conflicts out you want to see in a mega game where people are very passionately arguing about something they didn't really care about before they got cast.
Yeah. Okay. So all of the groups then have natural enmities built in with one or more of the other groups to kind of provide friction as the game goes on.
Yeah, like the largest is Central, who were the old Martian government recently reawoken, and they're the only team to have a mention in every team's briefing, and it's all ranging from neutral to negative. So it's a team that's basically meant to start the game kind of some ways very strong with a lot of really powerful resources at their beck and call, but in many ways every other team really doesn't trust them too much. So it's like, we've got all these fancy toys. Yes, but you left us alone for a century. Why should we trust you?
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. So what are the kind of asymmetries built into those teams then? Is it purely just the briefings, or are there, as you mentioned, with Central, kind of resource asymmetries there as well?
Yeah, so basically the mechanics for teams is they have two ways to get resources. So each in their bases and their team boards are stations like in Den of Wolves, where you can put a pop token to get resources out of it. But also there's a 4x element of the map, and you can claim land which gives you resources based on whether it's like special or not, and some are better than others. But in many ways, some teams like Central have a very small population, but very nice stations, so getting a lot of resources from that. But then you have other teams like Stadium and Station and Hephaestus who have a lot more population, but their stations inside their base are a lot weaker. So at the start of the game, the idea is that Central has a really strong start. They can really kind of put their weight around, but as the game goes on and Stadium kind of picks up steam and takes more land and gets more allies, they should start to kind of push the balance more against their favor, because their resource boost hasn't really got larger since the start,
Yeah.
while Stadium has really been able to ramp up in a way that scares them.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. Since we've been talking, or at least touching on how resources work there, when you run us through basically how that system works.
Sorry, can you reword that question a little?
The resource system, the kind of worker pop and the gaining resources, how does that work?
So for on the map itself, you have a token like you would on Den of Wolves, as it were, and you would place it on the map and you claim it as your own. And then every upkeep phase, the resources will be placed on that token for you to collect and bring back to your base. So it would be a situation where stations give like immediate effect, but like the best way to kind of long term is to kind of spread out across the map.
Yeah.
That's what you're
Okay. Yeah. So was the inspiration for that Den of Wolves, or is it just something you liked from somewhere else?
It was a little bit of Den of Wolves, so I really liked how that worked, especially when I think it was the game we were at in London, where a lot of the control had to dip out, and a lot of the players had to kind of step in, as it were, for resource collection, because it was too much for the control at the time to let us kind of handle that, and we did it fairly well. So I thought it's a really nice system, but how can we kind of mix this alongside other systems to kind of add some asymmetry into it? Because while it's really nice in Den of Wolves, it works really well with Den of Wolves because of the way it's framed. In other games, need something else with it, I think, to make it work in that way you'd want it to.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So we've kind of covered there the factionalism system, a bit about resources. What are the other kind of big parts of the game, kind of underpinning mechanics or theming?
Well, the main one would be the government mechanic, which I think a lot of people have really kind of latched onto it really well. I'm quite happy about it, which is every team has an ethos, and they have two, and one's like what they believe in, and one's like kind of the government they prefer. So one of them would be like liberal democracy or green technocracy, and everyone has two of them. And when you form a government, you have to pick one of each to form it, and some like certain types, some don't. So it's that kind of narrative element of what people have animosities and want to form teams, governments together, get the bonuses out of that. It needs to be in a way that would match what they believe in. So if you form as a government that is opposed to something that someone doesn't like, they should be very unlikely to want to join it, even if they are your best friends. Because yes, that is great, but we don't like the way you're forming your government. You'd have to change it slightly to match, in a way that most teams are in combinations that there's no perfect solution to it. Some would like it, some won't, and you can always be forcing someone kind of out if you had to kind of compromise.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. So, people in the audience, questions, comments, or if you were in the game today, anything you would like to follow up on? Let's not make this just me asking questions. Let's see what you've got for Andrew. Okie dokie. So we're kind of going through the list. One thing is I want to ask about the USS Enterprise. That's a name I love, obviously. What's the deal with them?
The USS Enterprise was basically an old naval ship of the US Navy, Space Navy. It's like the USS, like Gerald Ford, and these massive super carriers that have crews in the tens of thousands and are small cities in themselves, and they're essentially hyper patriotic kind of knights in shining armor, essentially, who want to kind of protect everyone in Mars from their own good. But their main overall brief in their like objective, if they want to work on it, is fix our engines and fly again, which is something that you can do. And in both this run and the first run, the Enterprise managed to do it. But it's like an entire game's objective is getting all these parts, getting all these resources together to fix it to fly once more. And it's like this nice ending for those teams. It's we've done it. We're finally in space again, and it's a big moment for everyone to watch it happening, especially those who have helped make it happen. Because in that first game, the first run in August, it was like half the game, and half the teams were involved in what was called SpaceX 2.0 to bring it back into space. And when it happened, it was like this triumphant moment we ended the game on. So I was quite happy with that ending.
Yeah. Okay. And all of the teams have big objectives like that built in for them?
Some have bigger objectives, similar size objectives. Others are smaller, but equally of that long-term goals that would take a lot to put together. So for some, like NBC, it's re-establishing their satellite network. For others, like Central, it is get from Earth a guarantee of them letting us be independent from them in a way that we weren't beforehand, rather than the colonies. We are now independent Mars once more, and getting that off Earth.
Yeah. Okay. So a question from John from the audience. Is the overall balance of teams' political preferences intended to balance out and be zero sum? So we design teams to migrate towards forming two large governments like we saw today?
I would say probably there are a couple of blocks somewhat built into the system. So from briefing and the way that tracks, a couple of 2 or 3 governments should form. But today, having those 2 massive blocks was a bit of a surprise, as it were, because I think there wasn't enough conflict in the game itself to cause people to want to really kind of fight each other or butt heads over land. People seem quite content to kind of let bygones be bygones and just let land kind of just sit there rather than shoot over it. Which kind of let those kind of slow kind of friendships build and those governments to form over the game. But mainly those 2 factions almost got into about 2 or 3 different major wars with each other. And it was only through like luck and some good diplomacy that they were managed to kind of swerve away from it. I think if any of those did kind of turn hot, we would have had both governments probably collapse fairly quickly from internal struggles rather than external conflict, which is kind of more what we prefer in that kind of game, as combat can really kind of ruin the people's day if it kind of goes south for them quickly. Which is why there are some mechanics in place to prevent that from really hurting them for too long, like the stations and having some strong units that they can't remove from their HQ protect it. It was still a situation which is a bit strange to see, because all the other two runs, they have had some large governments formed, but never for too long, always like a turn before people like their own problems cause them to leave. And today, which is a weird circumstance of a lot of strong-willed players and a lot of external thoughts kind of seeping in.
Okay. And does that present a problem for you as the game runner if they manage to form two blocks like that? Do you have to correct things so they don't get too quiet and all PC and lovey-dovey halfway through the game?
I would say I've got enough system. Like, there's some systems in place. I think we were noting towards the end, even though there's a large kind of government formed of all of them, and it's kind of nominally kind of one. We kind of considering in the end that in a turn or two it would have collapsed completely, and same with the other two governments. They were there, but at that point their gameplay changed from how do we form a government to how do we keep this monster we've built alive.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, players will quite often put together a Franken-Zolted type of organization. So, question from Kevin: apart from the one we just talked about, I suppose, what surprised you in this game compared to the other times you've run it?
I'd say the thing that really kind of caught not me off guard, I think control off guard, was I'd probably say how well the traitors did in the overall kind of like how much they were able to really kind of affect the game and cause it to swerve in directions it hadn't previously. I think part of that was them having a lot more leeway to do some wizard wheezes and cause chaos.
Okay, so we haven't talked about that yet. So why don't you walk us through the traitor mechanic for Red Planet Rising?
So there are two traitor teams that were EarthGov and the Church of Red Mars. The latter being a kind of religious group who is opposed to terraforming in all its forms. So there's some terraforming status and the terraforming stations around the map, and their aim is to kind of blow them up. And if there's any governments forming that are pro-terraforming, to kind of do what they can to destabilize them or cause them to have a more anti-terraforming stance. While the other terraforming group, the main traitor group, is EarthGov, and that's the former Earth government from Earth sitting on Earth, as it were, kind of sowing chaos because they want Mars back. Not now, maybe not 10 years from now, but at some point they're coming to claim Mars as their own once more. And they would rather have it be one which is destabilized, which was small polities and then a unified whole. And they're kind of there to either steer people to ally with Earth or prevent any large governments as formed in this game from really kind of being a solid block that can really resist any kind of attempts to claim Mars again.
Okay, that's interesting. And what was your inspiration for putting those in? Because there's a traitor roles and traitor teams are always kind of contentious when you talk to people about them. Some people love them, some people hate them. So why did you decide to put them in, and what do you think they bring to the game?
I'm personally a big fan of them because I think if they do them well, they can really kind of make a lot of nice narrative events happen. But I think part of the reason why I wanted them in narratively was who would be off on the sidelines, and while like the wolves and den of wolves, they are an off-map entity who is always hostile. I think Ed Silverstone, who was plot control in the first game, really did a lot of great work in that we kind of transformed EarthGov from a non-playable group into this very much entity players could interact with and respond with and kind of make deals with, as it were. And they are not hostile as such. They are belligerent, they're a bit aggressive, a bit arrogant, but they're not hostile necessarily. They're willing to work with you if you put a nice front for it. And in each of the games, they have sent ships to Mars as part of that. Some are just basically ruses to cause chaos, others is an actual force of troops that have been requested by players if they ask them clearly are not. And it helps kind of really kind of coalesce narrative moments, because in both the first and the third game, became big sticking points about how they should keep going and how they should react, with like the first game being, do we ally with Earth or do we start shooting? No, we're going to start shooting. Oh no, they're allying with Stadium. We need to kind of work out this. Are we going to try and take out Stadium, or are we going to try and kind of bring Stadium back into the fold? That kind of chaos, and with Mars being kind of partially terraformed, it was who would oppose that and how would that kind of stir people into action. As otherwise, normally people just keep boosting it higher and higher. We needed some way to kind of drop it down and kind of get people pointing fingers, so that everyone had more than just a peaceful game of building and turtling, doing some diplomacy. Because in today's run, we had a couple of terraforming stations blown up, and it had a lot of players doing some investigations and blaming teams and having very much a fun, confusing who's blowing up our damn terraformers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that type of conflict is essential. So next question, this one actually from Chris. What inspired you to create Red Planet Rising? Why Mars and not, say, Earth?
I think the reason why I chose Mars was that it was a much more evocative setting to have as a location, because Earth's been used a lot. And while Mars has been used, it's never been in this weird context of what would happen if Earth has started colonizing Mars, Moon, various planets, but then into like a galactic cataclysm happens, which brings them back into a, not the Stone Age as such, but a situation where Earth has lost contact with Mars because they've been nuked. Mars has been nuked, but what these have complexes built to last the Martian atmosphere. They should be able to kind of survive mostly intact. And then who would survive and how would they survive and how would these groups get really weird over time? Because originally it was going to be this D&D campaign where players would be Central, or part of Central when it first reawoken, exploring this weird new landscape where you'd have a lot of these large admiralties, which were what Enterprise and Shanxi turned into, being these feudal knights running the show alongside the groups who are here and there affecting the plot in various ways. So like Stadium and University, MCPD, like encountering these guys and wondering what's their deal, how do we work with them or do we not work with them.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Next one from LJ. What are some of the big differences you've noticed across the plays about how players had chosen to engage in the game? And I suppose a question on from that as well, what do you think is behind the different approaches?
I think it's a situation where the briefings are quite open-ended in many ways. The briefing kind of gives you a strong kind of narrative idea of who you are, and there's enough like objectives kind of you can pick and choose, some of them to ignore, some to really focus in on exclusively. Because I know the Enterprise in that first game went, we don't care about these first two objectives, we only care about the engines. We are making this ship fly, it kills us. And that's all they did, because all they wanted was the engines, because of some flexibility. And like various teams have taken their briefings to various levels of chaos. So in today's game, Odin, which is like this corporation who doesn't care that their weapons were used to help end civilization. They're quite proud of that fact, because they make the best weapons. And if you want good weapons, go to Odin, because we have the tools for the job. And they went straight into that. So when people were bombing up locations, like, well, it wasn't us, it wasn't our bomb, but if it was, there would be the best bombs available. Any publicity is great publicity, and they went straight into this insane kind of like libertarian kind of group, which is kind of what they're meant to be. Another game to being a lot more peaceful, a lot more pragmatic, a lot more kind of friendly. But in other games, it's been different teams having that same level of, we're going straight into our brief. In the second game, Hephaestus, when these teams based on an old mining corporation who have gone socialist, as all the bosses are dead, or what left of the miners, and they're like Harlan County in the 1920s. And they found Central and went, we're going to kill them, we're going to blow them up. We're going to mine all the way from our base to theirs, buy a bomb, send it to them, and blow them up because they're the man, and we're going to take up the man. That's been completely different from the first and the third game, but they had that ability in the brief to kind of see that characterization, which is completely different from two other completely different teams, is like a nice bit of flexibility you have.
Yeah, and I suppose then the question is that a pro or a con for viewers running the game? Because it's great to get different emerging narratives, but does it present a problem for kind of consistency and how you approach the balance in the game if teams seize on randomly different parts of their brief for what they're going to do for the day?
I think it's a situation where, for control, it gives us a challenge because we kind of need to kind of be prepared for a lot of kind of possible narrative events. But I think for the players, it's a massive strength, and I wouldn't kind of get rid of it because I think that range in ways the game can go is something that kind of has helped players who've been like 2 or 3 of the games come back because they know they're going to be in for probably a completely different experience in the way that some games kind of, it's the same rules, same everything, and while it's different in many ways, a lot of what's happening is somewhat similar to the previous run. You've seen the story happen, you know what's going to happen next. In Red Planet Rising, it's, we think they're going to do this, we expect them to do this. Nope, they've not done that, they've done something completely different. That, why, how? Okay, let's deal with this. And that kind of actually keeps us on our toes, but it keeps players in the many ways kind of rolling with the punches.
Yeah, I definitely see it as a strength as a player. I suppose it's just kind of wondering is it doesn't make it hard to brief control, but it was good to hear that. So next question then from Kevin. You use Miro to control the maps. What did Miro do well? What didn't it do well? And I suppose why did you choose Miro to start with?
I think, well, I was part of the science team for Watch the Skies in December where they used Miro quite heavily. And I think that really drew me to it was how versatile it was to kind of let us kind of go wild with our science game. But equally, we had, I think, 25, 30 people on that board at the same time. And I didn't notice any lag or any main issues with it running in a way that I noticed with the first one, which was spreadsheets, which was a terrible idea. Never do that. And with Roll20, which I like Roll20, it's a good system, but I think there's something fundamentally kind of that needs to be done with Roll20 to make it work for that scale. So you can either have one main map, but that's too much, or have 3 smaller ones. But as a game that has 3 maps and part of it is maps interacting, it makes controlling for the map team very difficult in a way that I think in physical games you wouldn't get, but in this game it kind of can really affect some teams' days if their map control is having to switch between 2 different Roll20s at once. Same with when you're producing units and giving permissions out, there's a lot there that takes too long. Miro being fast, flexible was kind of the main kind of draw, and the idea that if we can get all the maps to the same board, all the control together, it would make those inter-map changes so super quick. So it's, oh, you're moving from this map to the next, I'm going to scroll half a page there, I'm done. In a way that in the other game it'll be, let me just inform 2 of a control and get this sorted for you. Oh, that's 5 minutes, we now need to move on to a different phase. Sorry. But the main issue I found with Miro as a tool was like PDFs, you can put PDF tokens on, which is great. However, currently PDFs are instant to the user. So if I change pages, only I'm seeing the change, you're not. Which means that when it comes to tokens, they can be flipped, yes, but only you're seeing the flipping. And as part of a game which has flipping tokens to kind of have a partial information game, that really affects how combat can work. And I think part of the reason why it wasn't as aggressive is people had the full picture at all times. And the idea is you shouldn't have the full picture. You should be bumping around in the dark. You should be fighting each other by accident because you think you have a chance, but you're not quite certain. And that kind of Cold War aspect, in a way that it's, no, I know exactly what they have. I'm not going to fight that because I can't beat that. Or I'm not willing to try and fight that because I know I can beat it, but it's not worth it. But I think that was kind of the main issue. I know some people may have mentioned loading times, but I didn't notice any. I think a lot of the map control didn't notice any. But that's something I think in the survey I'm specifically asking for map control to respond. How did that map work? Would it work again if I did it a second time, or would it be a situation where I need to find an alternative route at least? There are some areas I know I definitely need to find an alternate solution for, especially like combat. There must be some way around that. I can think of ways. I've got a couple of ideas, but they're kind of bodge job fixes rather than a true solution. But maybe it's a case where that bodge job solution is actually the best result compared with the alternative ways we have available to us at this stage.
Yeah, okay, that's already interesting. So, question from Ed Silverstone then. So, Red Planet Rising factions are interesting mix of fairly serious, Nomad, Central, and off the wall, Biodyne, Odin. How do you maintain a tonal consistency? How critical do you even think it is?
I think you try and treat those off the wall teams in the same manner you would those serious teams. So, yes, Odin is an off the wall team. Yes, Biodyne is a corporation turned cult. But you should treat that as, yes, how they act, how they operate. And if that team does go, we're going to go full into this, we are tree hippie corporate types, let them. But if they want to kind of take a more nuanced, like lower, slower approach, that they can easily do that. I think the main balancing act is that team interesting to play as, because the one thing I do not want players to have is, I'm playing as Biodyne. I don't really want to. I want to play as those guys. They seem interesting. I want everyone to go look at their briefing and go, we're what now? We're cultists, but we're corporate types. We believe on corporate propaganda. Cool. Oh, who are you? Oh, we're the Enterprise. Who are you? Oh, yeah, we want to go back to space because we're like knights in shining armor. Oh, I don't mind being you as well. It's that kind of, you want to have everyone have this briefing that makes them go, I can work with this. I can do a lot with this. And I think that's the main thing, rather than consistent tone.
So basically, as you think, as long as all of the factions have a hook that could be interesting to people, that's more important than a tonal consistency. And essentially, people will sort the tonal consistency out themselves because they're playing a game, right? So they'll just play against the people who are in front of them. So it doesn't actually matter if you balance the tone; they'll do it for you.
Pretty much, I think, like the tone is based on how the players respond in many ways to the world, because you can set the scene as best you can, but they will many ways will respond in their own, they would have their own readings of the briefing and the setting guide, and they will still act as they think they should. And there's no kind of real way you can or should try and make that clear to players, because it will only kind of affect their thoughts in a way that you shouldn't want to. So if they take it one way, cool, let's see where that goes.
Yeah. Okay. So a question from John. How autonomous is the gameplay, in your opinion, against other games? So do you find a lot of control intervention is needed to either manage players' plans, small energy, plot points, or direct the high-level plot you designed?
So I think I'm going to read that again. So I'd say for today, because of the way Miro worked, we had a Miro system rather than spreadsheeting, we kind of switched partway through that turn 2 free to a Miro action on the system. Like, we'll trust you to do the upkeep, we'll trust you to do that. And I don't think we noticed any major situations where that kind of didn't get followed. I think people were quite respectful and responsible with that kind of way of playing. And I think that kind of was very autonomous. We kind of went, okay, that's our job to do. We realized we can't really handle that as we thought we could, and it could. But put our intervention where we need to really step in is that high-level wizard weave plot stuff in the narrative, especially with some off-map groups like EarthGov, where that can steer the narrative. We need to be there ready to help guide and give those interactions to help let them decide.
Okay. So another one from John. Can you talk briefly about the tech used today and how it performed?
So I think the main one was the mirror, but in the previous runs, it's been a very spreadsheet heavy system. So all the team boards was done by spreadsheeting. The map resource situation was done by spreadsheets. I think there was 14 spreadsheets in the second run. Today we got rid of all of that. It was all Miro, all Discord, and that's kind of how I wanted to run, because there's been like I'd say two groups have kind of somewhat formed over the lockdown, with one going, we need to kind of get more programming into this. We need to make it more automated, get the code to sort out what we would do. So you click a button and it will do it for you behind the scenes. I think it's what I believe more is we need to kind of keep coding to itself. That's too much work for what the hobby kind of A is asking for, and B, what you're getting out of it. There's no point spending 40, 50 hours coding an app for it to work for only one game if you're only going to have it used once for 7 hours. Trying to make a more board game, trying to recreate that actual tabletop experience as closely as you can. So with the Miro, I wanted resource players, military players on the map to every upkeep phase, when they come back, have the resources they get on the Miro for them to drag their section copy onto their team board like you would in real life, because I wanted players in a real physical game to go to the board, see what they've gotten, and grab it to bring back to their team, and have that joy of kind of collecting these kind of candies, as it were, and kind of in a way that you don't get with, controls come around and change some numbers. I want them to be actually moving tokens around and deleting them and copying them across. It feels like a bit more involved from their perspective, rather than just, oh, there's a number change from 6 to 7.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. You mentioned the the other groups. I think there's the Omega group. There's another one as well. This guy's doing Nexus games. So what do you think about those groups in general? Because I suppose I personally find Nexus quite interesting. Automating a lot of stuff, so you don't need as many control, or you can free control up on plot points rather than mechanics. So do you think that has mileage, or do you very much think that the things like Miro are close enough?
I think it does have mileage. I think like Scott, because he did Afterlife, which you were a part of, I know, but it did really well. I think a lot of effort went into that to make it work as well as it did. And I think it does have a lot of mileage possible that kind of really helps it stand out. But I think it's a situation where it depends very much on what game is being made, or if it's a situation where it's a reusable system that can be changed to fit the theme, rather than system changing, because I think they've got a lot of work we need to put in to make them operate at the stage where we would need them to be, for it to be a accessible experience. Because I know we've got a lot of players who would come back for the first time, and if the system is not working, or there's an issue with it mid-game, it could easily kind of cause the game to kind of come to an end if all the traffic kind of causes the server to crash, or there's an issue with the coding. So I remember with the second run, there was some slight programming issues with the spreadsheets that were fixed fairly quickly, but there was a good 20 minutes of panic on the control team where we're like, we need to kind of maybe pause the game for a little while we fix this first, because if this isn't fixed quickly, it may cause serious ramifications throughout the rest of the game. And I think if that happens, coding, if it's done properly, would be a really good system. I'm just worried about how much work it would be and what would happen if it didn't work as expected mid-game.
Yeah, I think those are all kind of fair comments. I'm a fairly big proponent of technology in games. I think they can open up a lot of avenues, but when it goes wrong, it can obviously have a huge impact. Okie dokie. So, a question from LJ. What are some of the most unexpected moments, choices that you've encountered in past runs?
I think that's, I'm trying to think of some of the wildest moments. I think it was when, at one point in the second run, NBC, like the Martian, like this press team, that's not a press team, unanimously declared themselves president of Mars. They just went, "We're now president," and they asked everyone to call them president of Mars, who was then kidnapped by the police in Stadium's place, and it led to the president getting assassinated by the police accidentally, which then resulted in NBC going, "Well, we're going to just nuke you from orbit. What do we have? Our satellite." So they dropped their satellite onto MCPD's HQ in that last turn at the same time that Hephaestus blew up the Central's building. So you had these two massive explosions taking out part of Mariner City as these two teams' entire games kind of coalesced around this massive moment that even like the people on the receiving end were like, "That was fair. We saw it coming and we didn't do anything." And even they were like, "Hats off." And we were just watching, going, "Is it happening? It's happening. Oh, it's going to happen. Yes, it's happening." Because we were always watching it kind of build and go, like, any moment now they're going to catch on. Nope. Oh well.
Yeah. Okay. So apparently SpaceX 2.0 has already been mentioned. So a question from Ed Silverstone then. When are we seeing the sequel, Red Planet Rising 2 War of the Worlds?
Never. Or probably never. I think say never. I have other kind of like things in the works that I want to kind of work on first. I think Red Planet Rising, as it stands with some fixes, can be a nice system to kind of bring back like a run every now and again. But I think a second kind of a sequel to like today's run or a general run is a bit out my scope for now. Maybe in a few years' time I'll consider kind of what would have happened if we added another 20 years on.
Yeah, okay, that is totally fair. So yeah, can you give us a sneak peek of the other stuff you're working on right now?
Well, as I said, I'm submitting a new game for True North in September, part of their next year's calendar. So it's a historically kind of themed game. So it's a 1950s set in Maine. And where I described it was it's Jaws meets Sleepy Hollow meets the House and American Activities Committee. So it's a bunch of small town weirdness, but like everyone's part of the weirdness. And I want to keep the weirdness down because it might affect tourist season too much. At the same point in time, they've got all of these big rivalries meeting local small time rivalries. Like, oh, I don't like her. Why is she's a witch? No, hit me in the bake sale.
That sounds very amusing. I'll look forward to that. We're gonna have a question here from John. What's the source on the cover art on the rulebook and the art in general?
I made most of it myself, apart from some of the icons I got from the Noun project, which does very good kind of simple, stylized, kind of basic imagery, really. But it's very nice to kind of use for kind of a sleek minimalist theme. But outside of those like 11 icons for every team but Central, everything else is mine. I did myself. So the map I made in Photoshop. I made the covers in Photoshop. I made the icons in Photoshop. So a lot of effort went into that, but I'm glad it paid off because I like the way it looks. I'm happy people like the way it looks. If my game is not good, I'll make it look pretty at least.
It looks very pretty, and that's a seriously great thing to be able to do. I'm a big proponent of more art for mega games, and that all looked really good from what I saw. We'll finish off with a question from Chris then. What would you change for a run in the future?
I think there's an underlying aspect of the game, which is the stability and government mechanics in some ways. I think they need to be tied close together and be a bit more harsh. I have more of an effect to cause people to want to shoot at each other. So I think there's a bit of too many surpluses. I think that kind of many people didn't really even care to fight. I think if we make the stability a bit more harsh, give people more of a reason to fight, give more people a reason to kind of be a bit more hostile in ways, that might help things along, at least kind of give players some weight to their actions, because if they think something doesn't really matter, have any narrative or mechanical effect, they might steadily go, you know what, I don't care about this, I'm going to ignore it. But if it constantly kind of sits in the back burner, it might really start affecting. So like we got the terraforming track that people do care about, has a mechanical effect in the game, has a narrative effect in the game, and people really care about it. It's a big thing that kind of draws a lot of the plot. I think if people's stability fits into that just as much, it'd be a really kind of nice way to help people kind of feel like their actions have weight and consequences that some people may feel not as much.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of general questions there. Where do you see Megagames going in the next 2-3 years?
I think once like lockdown is lifted, we're going to see a massive boom in kind of games. I think because people kind of want to kind of experience live events again. I probably think depending on how things are with the hobby, we might see. I probably think a larger shift in what people consider a mega game to be, and what a kind of a mega game experience would be. From I think we have a lot of traditional war game style inspired mega games, but I think we're probably going to start seeing a lot more increase in LARP-ish and more theatre-based games that are mechanical, light, but narrative, theme heavy, that care more about people dressing up and having kind of a LARP-ish experience, but in a more controlled environment, from a very meaty 20-page rule book, units moving around the board kind of game. I think that's what True North is kind of doing a lot more. I think that's why we've been doing quite well, especially with like retention and diversity, which what we're going to want to see is having games that don't fit that traditional mega game mode and are a bit off the wall in some ways.
Yeah. Okay. LJ is accusing me of giving you lots of easy gimme questions here. I will resist the temptation to throw any much too of a curveball. But I think you've been in. Oh no, we've got it now, LJ. You've been in a couple of the play-by email games. Are they mega games?
And that is a tough question. There's no way I can answer when I annoy someone. But I would say personally, no and yes, which is kind of a cop out. I'd say mega games as a hobby is quite a wide berth. I think what we need to do is have metagame itself be a more overarching title, but then break it into specific corners of it. So as they play by email mega games, which are its own thing, they'll have probably the war game style kind of invasion of like Czechoslovakia 38, Poland 39, those games be its own kind of section, which is more mechanical heavy, narrative light. Then you'll have probably the more LARP-ish, narrative heavy, mechanical light experiences, and breaking them into kind of 3 blocks would probably be a nice kind of way to help the hobby grow and at least kind of categorize what kind of experiences people are looking for. Because I think maybe people are going to some games expecting one thing, but actually getting another, and that is something that maybe needs to be not addressed immediately or as such, but as a thing to think about when you're talking about your game publicly.
Yeah, so expectation management is something that I think we've all talked about at one stage or another. What is someone's expectation as they're coming into a game? So perhaps, yeah, you could hive Megagame off into separate bits, because we've got terms like Euro games for Euro board games and worker placement games, legacy games. People know what they're expecting when they pick those up off the shelf. So there's one slightly harder question to end things on. So is there anything else you wanted to cover, Andrew?
Not really as such, but it's one of my kind of end by saying I think all the games we've run with Planet Rising, it's basically a situation where the control team it's the most important part of the game in many ways. I think today went as well as it did because I had a really fantastic control team behind me, making things run as smoothly as they did. So I want to kind of basically end by saying thank you to them for volunteering their time and being willing to help out running it, because I think their contributions were critical in many ways to kind of helping people have the best time of it.
Yeah, brilliant. I'd agree with that. But also, thank you very much to all the designers out there that run games as well.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Andrew. I hope everyone watching has enjoyed and learned something valuable from Andrew. So in 10 minutes, over in the next one, we will be starting the last event of the con, Memories of the Con, which Harrison will be hosting, and the rest of the organizers will be at. So please come and talk to us there and share your memories of the con. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you especially to Andrew, and I'll see you all in a few minutes.
Thanks for having me.